Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rashonda Wiggins. I'm going to be talking a little bit about behavior theory. I decided to talk about four behaviors. One is John B. Watson. One is B.F. Skinner. The other one is Edward Thorndike and Ivan Pavlov. Um, I'm going to talk about John B. Watson first. John B. Watson, he did his experiment. The name of his experiment is Little Albert. What he did was he focused a little bit on what he could do to actually frighten the little boy. Little Albert. Um, what he did first was he set a newspaper on fire, but that didn't scare him. So secondly, what he did was he set a furry rat in front of him. That didn't scare him either. So then he decided to show the rat again, white furry rat again, and along at the same time made noises. So the rat didn't really scare him. I don't per se feel like the rat scared him. I think the noise did. So he felt as if the rat made the noise. So it frightened him. So once he heard the noise, Albert began to cry. After repeating the same procedure various times, Albert actually learned to fear not just the rat, but all furry things, even throughout the loud noise. Watson's experiment proves that fear are not learned are not inherited. He successfully conditioned little Albert to fear the white rat, not to mention all similar things. Anything that looked like a rat, little Albert was afraid of him. And doing that experiment, the name of the occurrence is called stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization is the tendency for the conditioned stimulus to arouse similar responses after the response has been conditioned. Um, so in the experiment, the neutral stimulus in the experiment was the white rat. The unconditional stimulus was the loud noise. The unconditional response was fear. The conditional response was fear, and the conditional response was the white rat. Now I'm going to touch a little bit on B.F. Skinner. Um, B.F. B.F. Skinner, he was more focused on the operant conditioning. He discovered that the operant conditioning demonstrated the effect of positive and negative reinforcement on behavior. An example of a positive reinforcement would be rewarding the child for doing chores. So that would make the child want to continue that behavior so they could continue being rewarded. The negative reinforcement would be taking privileges away from a child for misbehaving in school or misbehaving at home, making a child to want to stop misbehaving so they could get their privileges back. So, B.F. Skinner did an experiment on a pigeon and a rat. The pigeon he used for the positive reinforcement. And in this experiment, he teaches a pigeon by using positive reinforcements. At the beginning of the experiment, the pigeon moved his head in every direction. When the pigeon moved his head to the left, Skinner rewarded him by giving him access to a dish of grain. But when Skinner decided to try to get him to move his head farther to the left, he was unsuccessful. So just by doing that small, experiment or demonstration, the pigeon learned that when turning his head to the left, he would be rewarded. Skinner then demonstrated the negative reinforcement with the rat, and what he did was place the rat in his Skinner box with electric current. As the rat ran around the box exploring his surroundings, he accidentally knocked the lever, causing the electric current to be switched off. The rat learned to go straight to the lever after being put in the box various times. To avoid the consequence of the electric current being shut off, the rat repeated the actions over and over. So, what the rat had to do was learn to go straight without, hitting that lever and knocking the current off. So, after that experiment, he did another experiment. Nope. That's it on his. Now I'm going to touch base on Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov, he discovered the concept of classical conditioning. And he discovered that while studying the digestion in dogs. Throughout the research, Ivan and his assistant would give food to the dog and measure the saliva that was produced as a result. He noticed that his dogs would begin to salivate whenever he entered the room, even when he was not bringing them food. So he discovered that salivary response was a learned response. The dog learned to anything the dog learned to associate with, the food triggered the same response. So, for example, the assistants whom the animals learned usually walked in the room with the food. They were the nutrostimulus. The salivary response to the presentation of food is an unconditional reflex. Salivating to the expectations of the food is a conditioned reflex. As a result, learning to change the behavior of animals. So, after Ivan and his assistants did that experiment, Ivan did another one that was a little similar to it, but a little bit different. He did another experiment by using the bell as a neutral stimulus and the food as an unconditional stimulus. Every time he fed the dog, he rang the bell. After doing the same procedure continuously, when he rang the bell with no food present, the dog still salivated. The dogs learned to associate the bell ringing to getting fed, leading them to believe that every time the bell rang, they would get fed. The bell became the conditioned stimulus to the dogs, and a new behavior was learned, which is a conditioned response. Okay? So, now we're going to touch base on Edward Thorndike. Edward Thorndike was known for the law of effect. Edward Thorndike is famous in psychology for his work on learning theory that led to the development of operant conditioning within behaviorism. Whereas classical conditioning depends on developing associations between events, operant conditioning involving learning for the consequences of our behavior. Skinner wasn't the first psychologist to study learning by consequences. Indeed, Skinner's theory of operant conditioning is built on the ideas of Edward Thorndike. Thorndike studied learning in animals, usually cats. He devised a classic experiment in which he used a puzzle box to empirically test the laws of learning. He placed the cat in a puzzle box, which was encouraged to escape to reach a scrap of fish placed outside. Thorndike put a cat in the box Thorndike put a cat into the box and timed how long it took to escape. The cats experimented with different ways to escape the puzzle box and reach the fish. Eventually, they would stumble upon the lever which opened the cage. When it escaped, it was put in again. And once more, the time it took to escape was noted. Um, the successful trials, the cats would learn to press the lever, would have favorably consequences, and they would adopt this behavior, becoming increasingly quick at pressing the lever. Errol Thorndike put forward a law of effect, which stands that any behavior that is followed by the pleasant consequences is likely to be repeated, and any behavior followed by the unpleasant consequences is likely to be stopped. Um, so in other words, like I said earlier about Edward Thorndike, his was actually similar to Skinner's, because they felt as if, a lot of behaviors would be repeated. If it was like a positive effect, it would be repeated. Anything, if it was like a negative effect, it wouldn't be repeated. Um, Thorndike introduced the concept of enforcement and was the first to apply psychological principles to the areas of learning. His research led to many theories of laws of learning, such as operant conditioning. Skinner, like Thorndike, put animals in boxes and observed them to see what they were able to learn. The learning theories of Thorndike and Pavlov were later synthesized by Hull. Thorndike's research drove comparative psychologically for 50 years and influenced countless psychologists over that period of time and even still today. So that concludes my behavior theory. I hope y'all learned a little bit from it. Thank y'all for your time and leave comments below. Thank you.